Welcome everyone, my name's Micah Weglinski. I'll be your moderator tonight. I'd like to thank you all for coming. It's a rainy day. You could be anywhere else in the world right now, and you chose to be here with your community partner, so thank you. We'd like to thank the League of Women Voters, Mountaineers for Progress, and also South Middle School and Principal Sandy Brown for letting us use this wonderful facility. We'd like to thank all the candidates for taking time out of their busy schedules. I know we're in the last pushes of the election here, so thank you for your time. Just a few things to point out again. We did have issues. The women's room is through this door to the left is open. The men's room, we've tried 15 keys and not one of them has worked. So if you go out this room past the refreshments, across from the office is the nurses' room, which is open and has a restroom. So for our introductions today, we're going to have each candidate have 2 minutes to make an opening remarks. And then once we ask questions, we will randomly select a name to have them which turn they'll go. We have a timekeeper, so each candidate will have only 1 minute to answer the question. And where is Barbara with her time? She has a yellow card there for 30 seconds and then a red card that says time's up. So candidates, if you can do your best to stick to that time, we have 10 of you here, so we'd like to get going as quickly as we can. We also have postcards. If any of you have questions that you'd like to ask the candidates, you can write those down. We will collect them. We are not trying to screen them. We're just trying to get a feel for what people in the room would like to ask. So if we see, one question that's asked by 3 or 4 people, we're going to put that at the top of the list. Okay? So, with no further ado, on the screen in the back, we will post the questions to remind everyone, but I would like to remind you that early voting starts on October 24th. Election day is November 6th, and in this format for House of Delegates, there will be 10 candidates' names on the ballot, and you will have the opportunity to vote for up to 5, and we will be electing 5 candidates. So keep that in mind when you make your selections. You can check your voter registration at www.vote.org. You can also check the West Virginia Secretary of State site. Some people have been having questions about their registration, so it's very easy. You go on, you put your name, your birth date, and it pops up and says, yes, you're registered to vote, or no, you're not. And I would encourage everyone to do that. Any one of us who's up here can help you do that when the forum is over. There's also a text number there. If you know someone who needs a ride to the polls, you can text that number and they'll help arrange get you a ride. So with no further ado, we are going to have the candidates make an introduction. I have everyone's name here on a card, and I promise we're just going to go at random. We have 2 microphones, 1 for each table, so if the candidates, once you pick, just be polite and pass them to the next person. So, randomly selecting number 1, we have Mr. Buddy Guthrie. Oh, I thought, my apologies. Well then, we'll take him out of the loop. Mr. Roger Shuttlesworth. The microphone's in the yes, sir.
Okay, I'm Roger Shuttlesworth. I'm running for the House of Delegates here in Montague County, District 51. Appreciate your vote coming November 6th. I am a conservative Republican. I do have a lot of issues that I think are really present in Montague County we need to work on. Everybody rides on the roads that need repaired, and that's been going on for quite a while. Those of you who might have heard the radio this morning, I have some ideas and some hopes that Department of Highways can work with us. We have a lot of work to do in West Virginia to bring us up to the wild, wonderful West Virginia that I believe in. I'm a lifelong resident of Mon County in West Virginia, and I want to see it grow and be everything it can be. I reside south of Morgantown with my wife Belinda. I have 2 adult children that both graduated from West Virginia University. Blue collar worker, and I certainly will, when I get to Charleston, be working for those folks that are out there paying taxes to the state of West Virginia.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Next up, we have Miss Debbie Warner. There's a button goes.
Not real good at microphones.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
First of all, I want to thank everyone for having us here this evening, and for the League of Women Voters and Mountaineers for Progress. Appreciate this opportunity. My name is Debbie Warner. I am a fifth-generation West Virginia and a first-time candidate for public office. My husband Mac and I have been married for 36 years. The first 18 years we moved all around the United States and overseas with the military, and then we made Morgantown our home. I have 4 adult children that have served in the military, and I would like very much for them to all have the opportunity to come back home, which means getting jobs or having jobs and opportunities for young people to come. I'd love for them to come back and be able to raise their families and have some of these same experiences that they had, or for the children to have that they did growing up here in Morgantown. That's about it. Thank you.
Okay, great. Next up is Mr. John Williams.
There you go. It's on.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you to the League and to Mountaineers for Progress for having us. My name is John Williams. I have had the absolute privilege of serving you in the House of Delegates for the past 2 years, and let me emphasize that word privilege because it is a privilege to serve. It's been the biggest privilege of my life. When I spoke to you 2 years ago, I told you a lot about why I was running, and you may remember it. I'm sure my fellow candidates are sick to death of hearing about him, but I'm running because of my papaw, John Nelson. He was born into a coal camp in southern West Virginia, and the kind of poverty and circumstances that we couldn't even imagine, if not for the fact that it was all too common back then, and unfortunately it is still too common right now. His whole life he was able to benefit by people stepping in and helping him, that with his hard work he was able to get a hand up to a better life and better circumstances. A lot of this came from Franklin Delano Roosevelt's New Deal policies. And that is why I believe that government can help people. I don't believe that government is an impediment to people. Now, when I talked to you 2 years ago, I told you a couple of priorities of mine. Helping to fix the roads. I am a huge believer in the nearly $2 billion of investment that is going to come with the West Virginia road bond. Now, the dollars, I wish they were coming a little faster, but they will come, and I was proud of my vote in support of it, and I'm proud of the roads that will be built as a result of it. The other thing I told you about, I told you that I wanted to help the West Virginia child who sat on the school bus hungry and wondering if their meal at school would be their only meal of the day. Well, I worked on the Shared Tables Bill, a bill which child hunger experts say will be a silver bullet in the attacking plan to solving child hunger in the state of West Virginia. That's now law. I fought to repeal the state income tax on Social Security for our seniors. Because you've paid into it your whole life, why should you get taxed again? I have a proven record of fighting for people in Montague County and the state of West Virginia, and I'd be appreciative to have that same opportunity again. Thank you so much.
Great, and thank you for following our timekeeper's prompt. That was nice work.
Always.
No, appreciate it. Good work. Next up is Miss Danielle Walker.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Mountaineers for Progress and the League of Women Voters for having this forum. I am Danielle Walker, candidate for House of Delegates in District 51. And the reason why my name is on the ballot is because of my 2 sons, Dimitri and Devin. See, the time is now that we need just an everyday working person to listen and to take a stand. The time is now that those that feel like they don't have a voice finally get one. See, the time is now that we take a stand for women in their health care. The time is now that we take a stand for homeless, our seniors, disabled. See, that's everyone. And that's the candidate I am, where everyone is included and no one is excluded. There are so many things that's going on. So many people that get forgotten about. Affordable housing is my heart and soul. West Virginia was my second chance state because I'm originally from Louisiana. I know what that means to have nothing, but I know what that means to be a mountaineer and have everything. The strength. It's time that we rebuild West Virginia. We have a phenomenal foundation here. We have an excellent work ethic with all of our union workers. But we just need a little help. I am your help. I am your hope. I am your voice. So take a stand with me as we reach November 6th. As a matter of fact, go out and vote early, October 24th through November 3rd. Thank you, Danielle Walker.
Great, thank you. Next up is Mr. Joe Statler.
Thanks, everyone, for being here tonight and giving us this opportunity to bring our platform forward to you. I am Joe Statler. I serve presently as the 51st House of Delegates. I live in the western end of the county, out next to the Blacksville area, with my wife, Louie, and we had 3 daughters. But we're the 9th. I will say that I'm proud that my family's been here in the state for, not in the state, I guess, Virginia was here for 2 of the generations, but 9 generations. So we preceded West Virginia. We've been here and we're quite invested in this area. I served 10 years on the Montague County Board of Education prior to going to Charleston to serve in the House of Delegates. I'm finishing up my 4th year down there. I serve presently as the Vice Chairman of Education. I serve now as the Chair of Firemen and EMS Services, and I would like to expand on that just a little bit. I will tell you that volunteerism is becoming a really dying object in the state of West Virginia, and I think across the nation. People's not giving back as much as it did. And I will say to everyone in here that anytime you see a fireman, and especially the volunteer fireman, the EMS, please reach out your hand and thank them for the service that they do. They're the ones that gives up a lot of their home life when the call is made. I can guarantee if there's any volunteer firemen in here and the call went off, you will immediately see them get up and leave. And I see the light coming up. Also serve on transportation and energy committees. The things that I'm looking for is, as chair of the fire and EMS, I really want to move that forward. We have not given and recognized what these people do and what kind of challenges they have and what we need to do to meet them. And education, we're always got a continuing role in education in the state of West Virginia. We must work on that. And we'll talk more about it this evening. Thank you very much. My name is Joe Statler.
Okay, next up is Ms. Cindy Fritsch.
Hello, I'm Cindy Fritsch. It's been an honor to serve in the House of Delegates representing you. I've always had as my mission statement that I wanted to make West Virginia a place where our children could receive a good education and have the opportunities to remain in the state and provide for their families in a healthy and safe community. And that's the mission statement I've had every year I've served, and I always look back at that when I'm making decisions. I serve currently on the Finance Committee. I'm the chair of banking. I'm the vice chair of rulemaking review. West Virginia is one of the states where the legislature has oversight over regulations. So I work to make balance between protecting the public and not stifling businesses. I'm the newest member of the Health Committee in the House, and I've been serving on the Prevention and Treatment of Substance Abuse Committee. I think my passion recently has been in addressing the opioid epidemic. I've passed a lot of legislation, particularly the past 4 years, and much of that has been in the realm of trying to deal with the opioid epidemic, whether creating the Office of Drug Control Policy, collecting data on overdoses, requiring education in the schools, increasing treatment beds, and increasing enhanced penalties for those who would manufacture drugs in front of children or sell fentanyl, etc. On the Finance Committee, boy, that was a wild ride. We had some really tough years with the decline in our state revenues, but I'm proud to say that we created a stable budget last year, and it's that budget continuing on to this year that made it possible to give the largest pay raise in state history to teachers and other state employees. And we were able to freeze the PEIA so that the proposals being put forward by the PEIA Finance Board would not go into effect. Since my party took over, and I've been on the Finance Committee, we have dedicated millions and millions and millions of dollars to shore up the reserves of PEIA. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next up is Mrs. Barbara Evans-Fleischauer.
Thank you, Micah, and thank you to the League of Women Voters, to the Mountaineers for Progress, and to all of you for coming out tonight. There probably is a TV show that you're missing. And I think it's really important that democracy is a participatory sport. And thank you for playing and trying to learn more about all of us. My name is Barbara Evans Fleischauer, and I'm a longtime delegate in the House of Delegates from Montague County. And I think that is an asset. I do think that good ideas are always welcome, but I do think in a 60-day session, you have to move very, very quickly to get a bill through the committee process, read on the floor 3 days, over to the other side, and same thing there, committee process, read on the floor and passed. So I have learned a few things in the time that I've been there. I feel very lucky to be a representative and to have been able to work on issues and solving things. One thing I've spent a lot of time learning about is autism. I've worked a whole lot on children's issues. I've also worked a whole lot on veterans issues. And because I think that, and we have a long ways to go on both of those issues. I'm a Democrat, I'm an attorney, I'm a mom, and I would very much like you to consider giving me one of your 5 votes. And as my last thing, I want to say, please check your voter registration. I put up a post on my Facebook page, 100,000 names have been taken off the rolls in our state. And several of them are in our county, and they are people that have lived here for years and years and have voted every year. So it's pretty shocking, but you really want to check and make sure that you are going to be able to do it, because the deadline is the 16th. I have one friend who, it took her half an hour to get it fixed. So I recommend that you do that. Thanks.
Thank you. Next up is Mr. Rodney Piles. Barb.
Okay, well, definitely not table order and not last but least, but I'm Rodney Piles. I'm running for re-election to the House of Delegates. I've served 1 term, and like others have said, it's been an honor and a privilege and also a pleasure for me to serve in the House of Delegates. I'd have to say that it's probably the most exciting thing that I've ever done, and I've had some pretty exciting jobs. I was director of Archives and History in the Rockefeller administration, and when you work with the State Museum and the State Archives and the State History Library, you see some pretty exciting things. But being in the House of Delegates, I've had the opportunity to do some things for the people of Montague County, and I've also had an opportunity to do some things for my passion, which is historic preservation. I had a bill passed that increased the historic preservation tax credit. Now, for me, that was doing something to further historic preservation and the preservation and salvation of historic buildings in the state. But the state newspaper, the Charleston Gazette, liked it, did a front page story on the bill, and said this will create jobs and foster economic development. Well, golly, gee whiz, that was an unintended side effect for me, but certainly when I ran for election to this job, one of the things we all said was we were going to create jobs and promote economic development. So I was real happy to have that bill passed. I also sponsored one of the bills to exempt the Social Security income from the state income tax, and a co-sponsor of a bill to create a tax credit for to make a livable homes. I'll talk about that later. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And next up is Mr. Evan Hansen.
Oh, hello. I'm Evan Hansen, and I am a proud father of a college student. I'm a business owner. I started a business here in Mon County 21 years ago and have grown it through the years. And I'm a scientist. And I'm running because our politicians are failing us. And they're failing us in DC, and they're failing us in Charleston. And the people of Mon County deserve better. The people of Mon County deserve our leaders to be making smart investments in West Virginia, investments that'll pay dividends over time. But We haven't been doing that. And instead, what we have are roads across the county that are crumbling. We have an opioid epidemic that's particularly bad in the southern coal fields, but is also very bad here. And we have high levels of poverty across the state. And even in Mon County, with our diverse economy and low unemployment, we have a shocking number of kids that are going hungry. There's a big difference between those of us who are up here at this table tonight on a number of issues. One issue that I'm passionate about is clean drinking water. I was proud to have played a role in 2014 in helping the legislature respond to the Freedom Industries League. But since then, our clean drinking water protections have been chipped away at year after year, and some of the people at this table have cast votes against clean drinking water. Our mining industry has been in trouble, as everybody knows. Mining companies have gone bankrupt, miners have gotten laid off, and some people at this table have voted against coal mine health and safety, to weaken coal mine health and safety rules, essentially kicking the coal miners when they're down. That's not right for the people of Mon County. And there's people at this table that have voted time and again against teacher pay raises, while others of us up here have stood shoulder to shoulder with the teachers. I'm Evan Hansen, and I'm asking for your vote.
Okay, thank you for that. Now we're going to move into our questions, and I'd like to remind the candidates that we have 1 minute, and I know that sounds like a short time, but I remember from a rhetoric class I took in college, it's easy to write a 20-page paper, it's really hard to write a 1-page paper, so that's what we're going to ask you to do. So we're going to follow the same format, random order, and the first question reads, as a result of the teachers' work stoppage this year, Governor Justice assembled a task force to address the need for long-term solutions to the Public Employees Insurance Agency, or PEIA. What long-term sustainable solutions would you propose to help fully and permanently fund PEIA? And first up is Cindy Fritsch.
Don't start timing me yet. I do want to wait and see what the task force comes up with, but as I mentioned earlier, I was responsible for actually sponsoring the bill to promise funding to bolster PEIA so that we would not move forward with the income changes, et cetera, that were being pushed onto the PEIA, and also made a sustainable budget so that we would have, as you can see, much in the way of surplus. And in the past 4 years, I've added millions and millions of dollars of general revenue fund, not just to fund PEIA, but to bolster the reserves that were drained by the other party. And we have enough general revenue to sustain PEIA. We have enough surpluses. We also have, PEIA has a surplus on its own. I question PEIA being based on income at all. I know it's the income changes that upset people and the invasion of privacy. I think that it would be important to seriously look at whether we should be basing an insurance, a health insurance, on income or not. That's the only change I would really see right now. It's a very efficient program, so I have not been supporting privatization only because it's so efficient, and it is a low government, a reimbursement to providers, which helps it save money. So we'll see what they come up with.
Okay, thank you. Joe Statler.
Well, if I can get that button turned on. I will tell you that healthcare is an issue across this country for everyone, not only the PEIA. But when we're addressing the PEIA, the one thing that stands out clear to me is there was a promise made. And I do believe from my background, as I was raised on a farm, is when you make a promise, you keep the promise. And so therefore, we must keep the PEIA solvent, and for all the employees that's out there in the state that's on it, because it was something that was given, saying that we may not be able to give you the wage that you want, but at least we will give you the health care. So I think one of the things that we have to do is, of course, we have to see what the policy of the Blue Ribbon Commission comes up with and see where it's at. I do believe we have to have a stable funding source, for the PEIA. Looking out into the future, it's going to be hard to plan for 50 years down the road, but we certainly can look at the 5 and 10-year plan and make sure that we have that money set aside and available for it. And I will tell you that the general fund, we can look at some of that. I think the $100 million that's been promised by the governor is there, will be there, and ready to go. time's up. Thank you.
Okay, Danielle Walker. And you can, candidates, just leave the microphone on. I think that should be fine.
I think so. I
Yep.
think that'll be better. So we need a solution. And that would be making West Virginia go green, medically and recreational. We need revenue in this state. We need a severance tax. It's about supply and demand, and we have it here. We need to start making these corporations accountable. You have stolen the coal. You have stolen the timber. When are you going to stop stealing and start giving back to our people? We have nothing left. So we need to make cannabis recreational and medical legal in the state of West Virginia. That will be one source of revenue coming in where we can help our teachers. If the teachers' health care is being taken care of and their wages, then think about what our students are going to excel in. Our scores are going to go up. We will no longer be last, left at the bottom. We will now be first.
Thank you. Next up is Roger Shuttlesworth.
Okay. Definitely a difficult question for the state of West Virginia, and it's been kicked around for many years. And I think that's part of the problem. We need to get it to the Finance Committee. They need to come up with a budget long-term. We need to have a plan going forward, and I'd really like to see it, the PEIA funded out of the general budget without having to go out and find another source. Danielle talked about the marijuana issue. Sure, that's a funding opportunity out there, which I'm not really for opening up the state of West Virginia to marijuana on a recreation basis, but medical basis perhaps. But yeah, I don't think the going out there and trying to find short-term answers to this is the issue. Coal may go up, may go down. Gas may go up and go down. We need to put in a line item budget, and the Financial Committee has to come up with a long-term solution to this problem where we can keep up with the finances that we promised to the teachers.
Okay, next up is John Williams.
Thank you. There are a variety of fixes. I'm sorry about geez, there are a variety of fixes that are talked about and about being put in place. But when any delegate advocates for these ideas, they're going to be able to have to defend some of them. And one that I really want to touch on, hammer on, is the increase of the severance tax on natural gas to 8%. So a lot of people say, but if you do that, John, they're not going to come drill it. They won't do it. I'm going to throw some math at you real quick, and it gets complicated for a second. In 2014, the price of natural gas just tanked by about 300%. In that time period, the price was at $1,000 per 1,000 cubic foot. Now, with that, if you look at projections that are being made in 3 or 4 years, the price of natural gas will be at about $3,500. With a 8% severance tax on that, all they would be losing is $280. That's all they're losing. And I'll go back and tell you that when the price of natural gas did plummet, production increased by 48%, indicating that they will be able to be profitable at 8%. I don't mind them trying to get rich. I just want West Virginia citizens to get rich with them.
Okay, Debbie Warner.
I'm interested in seeing what the task force comes up with on this issue. I think we need a long-term solution to it, a permanent funding source, which may be from a couple of different places. And I think it needs to be a line item in the budget. And it needs to be a stable source, something that we can rely on from year to year.
Okay, Evan Hansen.
Well, I'm glad you asked this question because this is another example of a wise investment that we need to make in West Virginia. We do need to find a dedicated funding source for PEIA. We can't just rely on general revenue funds. They've tried that in the past. It hasn't worked in the past. It's not going to work in the future. And the governor made an announcement some weeks ago that he has $100 million he wants to dedicate to this, but that just seems to me like an election month ploy. It's the people who get elected, people from this room and across the state, who serve in the legislature next year that are going to have to make a decision about the budget. The governor can't just make that happen by snapping his fingers like that. So we need to invest. We need a dedicated funding source, and one funding source that has come through loud and clear from the PEIA task force recommendations, at least from the people who spoke at those meetings, is an increase in the natural gas severance tax. And like John said, this is not going to drive the natural gas industry out of West Virginia if we raise it to the right amount. But it can increase our revenues by tens to hundreds of millions of dollars a year.
Okay, Rodney Piles is next.
Well, I think as others have said, we're going to have to wait and see what the task force is going to come up with. Last week, we got this magnificent news that there's this tremendous budgetary surplus, and the governor says, well, PEI is taken care of. Well, if that surplus doesn't materialize, then we have to look for funding. The governor did have a revenue package last year that died in the Senate. Democrats were even able to coax him into an increase in income taxes on high-level incomes. So there's that. The governor also proposed a sugary drink tax, along with other sin taxes on tobacco and alcohol, and I think those are other options in addition to the increase in the severance tax that's been talked about.
Last up, Barbara Evans-Fleischauer.
Thank you. I think we are going to we will need a diversity of sources to cover this funding. I don't believe that we are just going to pull $100 million out of a hat for PEIA. I think we need to have a steady source of income. I think increase in severance tax can be part of the problem, part of the solution, but they're volatile. I support an increase in the tobacco tax, in probably the other sin taxes too, like alcohol and sugary drinks. But one of the things we need to do is we need to diversify our economy. If we can grow the economy, we can get revenue that way. We probably need more renewables, but we also need more tech jobs. And we are not going to get any tech jobs unless we ban discrimination based on sexual orientation. Facebook, Google, Amazon will not come here unless we guarantee that our citizens will not be discriminated against and their employees will not be discriminated against. And they have made that loud and clear. So I would like to welcome the tech giants, and I hope that we can do that in the very, very, very near future.
Okay, thank you. And I would like to announce that this event is being live streamed from the Mountaineers for Progress Facebook page. So if you know people, and then that will be on our page. So if people that you know weren't able to be here or watch it, they can always access it later. Moving on to our next question. There's widespread and bipartisan support for both medical and recreational cannabis in West Virginia. More than 30 states have passed medical cannabis legislation. 9 states and Washington, D.C. have legalized it for both recreational and medicinal purposes. And I would add that Canada just legalized it for their entire country. What is your stance on the legalization of medical and or recreational cannabis? And first up is Evan Hansen.
The legislature passed a medical cannabis bill recently, but it hasn't been put into effect yet. It should be in effect soon, but a banking issue needs to be fixed first. And I strongly support fixing that banking issue as soon as possible so we can get that rolling in West Virginia. This is an issue of compassion. This is something that we need to do for people who are sick and in chronic pain and have other types of diseases or illnesses that conventional drugs are not addressing. So I'm strongly in favor of fixing that and getting medical cannabis out as quickly as possible. In terms of recreational, I'm certainly open to that as well. I think that we need to think about new ideas in terms of how to diversify the economy, in terms of how to generate new tax revenue, and how to just think differently than people have been thinking in the past. And I think recreational marijuana is one of those issues. I think if we do it, we need to debate it carefully and regulate it carefully and tax it heavily. But I am certainly open to it.
Okay, thank you. Roger Shuttlesworth.
Another very heated subject. I personally am not for opening up the marijuana to the state of West Virginia. I am for medical cannabis, and the physicians supporting that with their diagnosis and prognosis and following their patients closely. I do not think that the state of West Virginia can ride on that as a tax incentive to fix the problems we have. I lived through the 70s and the 80s, and I've seen some of the negative impacts of marijuana and the heavy use of marijuana, and I really don't believe that's where West Virginia wants to go back to. I see a lot of older folks in the room, and I'm sure you remember some of that. How much effect did that have on our young youth at the time, and did some of us end up well and do fine? Yes. But I can remember some of the danger and the driving under the influence, things like that. A lot of young people did in the 70s and 80s, and I really don't want to see that happen in West Virginia again. So I'm not for the opening up of cannabis to the whole state of West Virginia. I am a supporter of the medical marijuana, though.
Okay, thank you. John Williams?
Thank you very much. There we go. As it pertains to medical marijuana, I was a big supporter of it when it was in the legislature. I was happy that we were able to get it passed, but there is a hiccup that has to be fixed, and that's got to be a priority. West Virginia has the highest percentage of people who are on workers' compensation. The biggest number of those injuries come from the neck and the back. We are having our citizens being overprescribed these highly chemically engineered opioids, and we're going to deny them something as benign and simple as cannabis. It's a no-brainer to me. As it was said earlier, it's about compassion. As it pertains to recreational marijuana, we're in 50th place in just about everything, guys. There's no idea that we can't discuss and talk about. We at least need to have a discussion about it. The potential revenue that we're leaving on the table is $300 million. We do have to be careful, but we can't just keep letting everybody beat us to the punch on every single issue. I'm tired of that, and by the heads nodding in the crowd, I think you're pretty tired of it too.
Debbie Warner?
I've spoken with several physicians, and they say there is some medical benefit to cannabis, and I understand there's legislation that's been passed in that arena. As far as recreational use, my understanding is it's illegal, and until it's legalized and becomes a norm throughout the nation, I think I'm not ready to have a conversation about that.
Okay, thank you. Danielle Walker?
Well, that was one of my first answers, that we need to go green. We need to do it medically, we need to do it recreationally. That's going to bring revenue to our state. There's too many people hurting. My mother is a cancer survivor. Tomorrow we go in for a biopsy. I know what chemotherapy does to my mother. I have a child sitting here with autism. I know the benefit that he would receive from using cannabis. My oldest son, rheumatoid arthritis, fibromyalgia, hypermobility syndrome, narcolepsy. I know what cannabis would do to help him. None of us want to have the uncomfortable conversations, but if we're uncomfortable for a moment, we will bring a good movement, and that is bringing help to the people of West Virginia. That's what government is here for, to govern and to help, not corporations, but the people.
Joe Statler?
Well, first I want to say that it's not a banking issue we have with this medical marijuana. It's a federal issue. We've got to get the federal government to deregulate and change the status of marijuana if we're going to move forward with this. I don't believe that we should be going out there to try to invent a Ponzi scheme, opening up new banks just to handle money for a matter that's federally illegal. As if you're elected, you swear to uphold the Constitution, not only of the United States, but the state of West Virginia. So first we need to fix the problem there. I did vote for the medical marijuana because I do believe there is some uses out there. I believe there's studies out there that shows it's very useful, very much a help to a lot of patients out there, and I don't have a problem with them using it. I don't want to see them have to go out and buy it illegally off the states. I truly do believe that if we can make that available to them, that we make it available. And that even if it's psychological in their minds that it's helping them. So again, I think we have a federal issue here that we have to resolve before we resolve it at the state level. Thank you.
Okay, Barbara Evans Fleischhauer.
Thank you. I definitely support medical marijuana, and I'm open to the sale of recreational. I think we need to remember that there is not a single documented case of a person dying from an overdose of marijuana. Never happened. And yet, look what we have in our state from a drug that is legal. We have hundreds of people who have died, hundreds of families who have been wrecked by opioids. I think it's time we moved forward. Our past speaker blocked this, and we may have missed the boat because the Attorney General of the United States has changed the policy. So states like California and Colorado and Washington and Oregon, they're moving forward. Their citizens are getting the benefit for seizures, for pain, and ours are not. So we need to fix those banking problems and move forward with either closed loop or a state bank, because other states are doing it and we need to too.
Okay, Rodney Piles.
I'm a supporter of medical marijuana. I voted for all the bills that came through the House of Delegates supporting medical marijuana. I'm inclined to support decriminalization of marijuana. The closest thing we came to doing that in the House of Delegates was last year. We had to bill a bill to move it from a Class 1 drug to a Class 4 drug, and I supported that. But I think it's an issue that certainly should be examined further. I think it could ultimately be a source of revenue for the state, and that would help us.
Okay, Cindy Fritsch.
Well, I support CBD and cannabidiol, but that's not what we're talking about in the medical marijuana bill, and I did vote against it. I knew at the time that you couldn't bank the money. It was said on the House floor by one of my banking committee members. I'm the chair of banking. I was told one of my committee members said that on the floor. It's not a banking issue. It's an illegal drug issue. It's a Schedule I, and Jeff Sessions, despite the Cole Amendment that went through Congress, that you wouldn't stop funding, or that you could not fund prosecution, Jeff Sessions, the U.S. Attorney General, will prosecute. FinCEN will now prosecute, and the U.S. Attorney from the Southern District will prosecute. So no business. And when I voted against medical marijuana, I understood that you couldn't get insurance, you couldn't bank the money, you couldn't get legal advice. Your stockbroker can't even advise you to purchase marijuana stocks. So that's the financial issues involved with that. It's not a banking problem. It's an illegal drug problem. Jeff Sessions, perhaps he won't be in that position for much longer, but he is now. BB&T and U.S. Bank are the two banks that West Virginia banks with. Neither one of them will accept the money. No bank has come forward. No credit union has come forward. They could lose their federal charters. I want a drug-free workforce. I have a hard time even imagining that this state is capable of regulating a drug, frankly. And I question whether we should be creating a new state bank. We can't even the state government has trouble fixing potholes properly. This is asking an awfully lot. So I do not support recreational marijuana. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, and moving on to our next question is a labor question. In recent legislative sessions, West Virginia became a right-to-work state. Supporters of this legislation say these laws create jobs and lower the unemployment rate. Opponents of the legislation say it weakens labor unions, lowers wages, and harms collective bargaining. If elected, what position would you take on this issue and why? And first up is Rodney Piles.
Well, I'm very happy to say that I would strongly support repeal of the right-to-work law. It's It has not created the jobs that it was supposed to create, just like the $400 million tax break that big business got a few years ago that was supposed to create jobs and didn't. But I certainly repeal of the right to work laws at the top of my list.
Okay, next is Danielle Walker.
Unions is what built this state. Unions is what built this country. Right to work has no home, especially not here in West Virginia. It is sickening to see that the union laborers suffer from right to work. Their families are hurting. The jobs did not come. Look like it costs more money than what we thought that it was going to bring to the state. And we still don't even have enough people to even fix the potholes as someone applauded. Or maybe that's due because of some of the things that we placed on the people. It's not fair. It's simply not fair. Right to work has no right to be in the state of West Virginia. It was a bargaining for whom? Not the people, not the working people. And I represent the working people. So right to work will be repealed when I get there in January.
Okay, Evan Hansen.
I think instead of right to work, we need to invest in our workers. We need to invest in workplace safety, things like this. I think that right to work is part of a coordinated, systematic attack on labor unions over the last several years with the goal of weakening them and making sure that they can no longer be effective. And what that is going to lead to is lower wages, it's going to lead to less safe workplaces, and it's going to lead to an influx of cheap, out-of-state labor. When I get elected, I'm going to represent working people. I'm going to protect jobs and working people's dignity, and part of that dignity is to work in a safe workplace and be paid a fair wage. So I would vote in a second to repeal right to work.
Okay, Barbara Evans Fleischauer.
I strongly oppose this. I pretty much agree with what Evan and Rodney have said. It was an attack on unions. Unions are protected by the Constitution. You should be able to band together with other employees. It's part of your First Amendment right to discuss your workplace situation. I think you could also call it the right to work for less. And I think that everybody in our country deserves to get a decent wages and benefits when they put in a hard day's work. And, you know, and they also deserve a safe workplace. So I'm totally opposed to it. I signed on to legislation, sponsored legislation to repeal it, and I hope that we get a majority that can overturn that. It hasn't created jobs. It hasn't done anything that was promised. It just created a whole lot of animosity and not a safer state for West Virginia.
Okay, Cindy Fritsch.
Well, I want more jobs in West Virginia, so I voted for a lot of economic reforms, and one of them was right to work. It was hard for me to vote for it, but I did, hoping it would create jobs. And to my knowledge, the courts interfered, got in the way of right to work, so I don't know if there's even been a chance to tell what the effect is on our state to make these claims. So I want more jobs. We have laws to protect workers. I vote for those laws to protect workers and make them safe. And drugs in the workforce do not make them safe. And I voted for right to work, and that's what I'm sticking with. I'd like to see how it works out. As I said, there's been interference by the courts. It's hard to tell. It's hard to make all these claims against it, actually. Thank you.
Debbie Warner.
I support right to work. I believe it helps make the state of West Virginia more business friendly. It encourages investment from companies to, like I said, it makes it more business friendly. It can establish more manufacturing plants, all kinds of things. And I think by making this West Virginia more business friendly, and bring more people in and employ the people we have, it broadens our tax base, and I think we'll benefit in the long run with this.
Okay, thank you. Joe Statler?
I will tell you on this issue, there's a few myths out there. The first, I will answer your question. No, I will not repeal the right to work if I'm elected. So I can answer that question for you. I will also say that the state right now is experiencing 17.9% growth. That's not been anywhere accomplished in the past in this state. What done it? I don't know. I don't have any statistics to show you that the right to work has done that any more than anything else. So I'm not sit up here and try to tell you that kind of story. The one thing I will tell you though is, as far as the unions, you still can join in the unions. There is nothing in this law that says that you can't join a labor movement. And I don't have an issue. I worked in the mines. I dealt with the unions. I don't have an issue with the unions. They do a job. There's no doubt about it that they play an important role. So I'm not out there trying to bust the unions or the working man, but I do believe that there's some myths out there that you really need to get up on when you're looking at this issue. Thank you.
Okay, John Williams?
Thank you. I just want to give everybody a quick rundown again on what Right to Work is. What Right to Work does is it makes it so that you can receive union benefits without paying union dues. And me, I have a really difficult time imagining the majority party who is still in control, who passed Right to Work. I have a hard time imagining them telling any other sort of entity that they must provide a service without receiving payment. Sure can't imagine them telling that to the power companies, for instance, that you got to provide electricity to people even if they don't pay you for it. It's government infringing upon business, and not only that, what unions do, they have an important work that they do. They help people with safety and wages. Even if the economy was booming as a result of the passage of Right to Work, I don't think it is, but even if it was, we want an economy that's worth fighting for, that doesn't see wage stagnation because there aren't collective bargaining rights, that doesn't see an increase in death tolls because of deplorable job safety. In this state of all states, it's shameful that we're a right to work state with our labor history. Thank you.
Roger Shuttlesworth?
Right to work is definitely a heated issue again. I've worked as a blue-collar worker all my life. I worked in a union shop and a non-union shop. I believe that the union workers of West Virginia are some of the best trained individuals that are available out there in any workforce in the country. I worked with a lot of craftsmen, where I worked in a power plant for many years, boilermakers, pipe fitters, welders, all kinds of folks came in with training. If I was looking for a trained workforce, I would go to the union hall and hire union laborers. The fact of the matter is, Right to Work put it out there that a contractor can come and bid on a job, and he decides who he hires. He has to come with qualified people. If he doesn't have qualified people, he needs to go down and talk to the union laborer and get the qualified people. And I guarantee you, when you get down to Union Hall, you're going to get qualified people, because I've worked with them for years. They come in the door, they're ready to go to work. That's what West Virginia has. That's what they have through the labor unions. And I do not believe this Right to Work is defeating the purpose of the unions, and that is to provide trained workforce. And they are competitive. There's hundreds of jobs. If you open the paper up every day, there's truck driver jobs paying $20, $25 an hour that you can go today and get one of 100 jobs within 50 miles of here. So if you want to go to work and you're willing to work, there's jobs out there.
Okay, thank you. And before we move to the next question, just in the interest, I meant to say this at the beginning and I didn't. In the interest of fairness and respect for everybody, please limit outbursts and applause for the end. I just worry about things getting into something that turns into like a, I don't know the correct word, not a respectful way. So I appreciate your enthusiasm, but let's keep it for the end. Thank you very much. Okay, next question. This November, West Virginia voters will be voting for or against a measure to amend the state constitution to say the following, quote, Nothing in this Constitution secures or protects the right to abortion or requires the funding of abortion, end quote. What is your position on Amendment 1, and what are your proposed solutions for lowering the number of unwanted or unintended pregnancies in West Virginia? First up is Cindy Fritsch.
Well, I voted to put Amendment 1 on the ballot, so I support it. I think there's been a lot of misinformation out there about this. I think it will not eliminate Roe v. Wade, and women by state code are still protected for rape, incest, health of the mother, etc. with abortions. But I have sponsored legislation to eliminate taxpayer funding of abortion, and I got it through the Health Committee once, got it even further this year. However, there is a constitutional impediment. Just last year, there were over 15,000 taxpayer-funded abortions in West Virginia. We're one of 17 states where the taxpayer pays for abortion. There's a Hyde Amendment at the federal level where federal tax dollars are not required to be used for abortion. Why would a conservative, pro-life state like West Virginia be using taxpayers' funds to fund abortion? This gives voters the opportunity to say their piece on this issue. It will not take away the right to abortion. If the pro-choice groups want or feel so strongly about aborting babies, they could raise money and do this, help fund this for those women. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Roger Shuttlesworth.
I am a pro-life candidate. I am against abortion. I am pro-Amendment 1. I will vote yes. Everything I've done in my research of that does not infringe on a woman's right to have an abortion. I am against the taxpayers paying for abortion on demand. And I totally support this. I believe that a woman should have choice, and they still do, as far as I can see in reading everything I have about Amendment 1. As long as a female's opportunity to have an abortion is not taken away, I support Amendment 1.
Evan Hansen.
I'm against Amendment 1. I'm against it. There are abortions, many abortions, that are performed because they're medically necessary in order to save the life of the mother, or are necessary due to rape and incest. And Amendment 1 does not include any exceptions for that. What that means is...
Everyone, please, let's let the candidates speak, and we can have a debate at the end of the forum. Thank you.
Amendment 1 contains no exceptions, which means that the legislature can change the law the day after Amendment 1 passes, and women will no longer have those rights. All women deserve access to safe medical care, whether you're rich or whether you're poor. And what this will do, if it's passed, is rich women will still have access to abortions and poor people won't. And that's not fair.
Danielle Walker.
Well, you know I'm against Amendment number 1 because I wear it proudly. It's women's health care. My body, my choice, not the government. Not anyone sitting on this panel has a right to tell me if I can or I cannot. It's no exceptions. Not to rape, not to incest. We have enough children in our foster care system. And please do not use any women slandering names such as slut. That is not what this is. It is a medical procedure, and it's time that we start changing the stigmas. Amendment 1 has no home here. My body, my choice. It should not matter what I have in the bank account and what I don't. It should not matter if I was raped or if it was my choice. And so for that, we need education. We need free birth control. If you're going to take away abortions, then be ready to take away vasectomies also, because what's the difference?
John Williams?
I will say very plainly that I do not want to live in a society where a woman on an operating table could die because of pregnancy complications. I've always, in terms of women's health care and addressing that subject, I worked on a bill that I plan to reintroduce, which would make necessary, alleviate the requirement for women who are on Medicaid to go to get a birth control prescription every single month. That's the way it is right now. That's a big barrier for women to go and get birth control. I think pro-life and pro-choice folks, this is something that everyone could agree on would limit the number of unintended pregnancies, and I don't know how anyone could oppose that. Thank you.
Thank you. Barbara Evans Fleischauer?
Thank you. There are 17 words to Amendment 1, and there are two parts. One part takes away the constitutional right of women to make a decision about whether to bear a child, and it allows the government to force women to bear a child. And you say, oh, okay, well, they can pay for it. Well, what about the 10-year-old that has been raped by her dad? Is she going to be able to pay for that? I don't think so. And the Senate voted not to have any exceptions. This clearly does not have any exceptions, and I think it is horribly unfair and cruel to allow a situation where that child would have to bear a baby when she's a baby herself. I think this is wrong. I think that it would be the first time in our history that we have taken away constitutional rights, and we should vote no.
Thank you. Joe Stetler?
I did vote to put Amendment 1 on the ballot. And the reason that I believe that it should be on the ballot is up for the citizens of West Virginia to have the right to go out there to say. It clearly shows, that most people support it. The one thing that I firmly believe is the federal government, again, the Supreme Court ruled on abortion. We can't overturn that. We can't change that. That's just a simple fact of the land. But I will also say that they also uphold, for medical purposes, anybody can get a funded abortion. That would be that 10-year-old girl that's out there, and I certainly believe, as Barbara does, that that is medically necessary. I wouldn't want to put that through anyone or any person. I'm not saying that there's a choice out there people makes, and I agree with John. I haven't heard his proposal all the way on that, but I'd certainly look at that bill that John is entertaining, because I don't have an issue with that. I do believe that we need education and control. Thank you.
Rodney Piles?
I am opposed to Amendment 1. I voted against it in the House of Delegates. It contains no exceptions, not for rape, not for incest, not even to save the life of the mother. And I've said before, I'm a Roman Catholic. My church is opposed to abortion. I'm in the Knights of Columbus. My organization is against abortion. I personally think that abortion is wrong, but it is a decision. An abortion is the most difficult decision a woman will ever have to make in her life, but it has to be her decision. She can consult with her doctor, with her family, with her priest or her minister if she wants to involve them, but it has to be her decision. And that's why, and I am opposed to Amendment 1.
Debbie Warner?
I agree with what Joe said, and I support Amendment 1. Pretty simple. I'm pro-life, and I support Amendment 1.
Okay, thank you. And before we move on to the next question, I know that this particular issue strikes at the heart of everyone probably sitting in this room. And I'd just like for everybody to just keep that in mind, that we don't need to leave this room and hate each other or, you know, have any anger. People feel strongly about it, and I feel with the answers like a tension, and I don't want there to be that. So just keep that in mind. And it actually ties right into our next question, which is, according to a poll by the Pew Research Center for the People and the Press, people have become more polarized in their political views. Surprising. In an increasing polarized political sphere, how would you work to foster bipartisanship and collaboration with your opposing party members? Danielle Walker.
We must come to the round table. We must have a time to listen, and we must have a time to talk openly, with open minds and open hearts, with open ideas. This is how we progress. From the beginning, my motto has been one love. And when we approach each situation with love and compassion and hope, this is how we change. Now, whether you agree with that change or you don't, we must at least be able to sit down together. We must be able to agree to disagree. We keep doing the same things and it's not working. I represent the working people. I don't care if you have a D or an R behind your name. You get up in the morning, you open your eyes, guess what? That's work.
Rodney Piles.
Well, I haven't served in the House of Delegates for 2 years. I've experienced this division, and I've seen the adversity. And I think what we've tried to do is, or what I try to do is, when we find an issue that that might cross party lines, we try to use that to build bridges to the other side. I know it came up during the session that. A closing of Hopemont Hospital, and it was kind of special to me because my dad used to work there. But I talked to the delegate from Preston County and suggested that maybe that could be a center for for opioid treatment or something, and so we were working together to try to keep it open. And also, I had a cat bill to prohibit the declawing of cats. And I had a lot of visits from the other side of the aisle, some Republicans that were interested in that bill. So once in a while, you have to find those issues that cross party lines and work together.
Thank you. Roger Shuttlesworth.
It is unfortunate in this country that the past few weeks we've seen a rhetoric coming down from Washington, D.C. at the highest levels where we should have men and women that we respect at the highest level to lower those offices to the point that they did in this last hearings for the Supreme Court. But that sets the stage for what this question is. Diversity between the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, and even the independents is quite diverse. We definitely are on different sides of the page. There needs to be some way to bring us together. And Rodney did hit on one thing. There are some issues that are pretty easy to cross the aisle on. Some of the issues we've talked about here tonight are very difficult. The abortion issue is a perfect example. We just talked about that. It's pretty obvious we're divided along party lines. There's got to be a reason for that. And some others have said that we need to talk about these things. And I think a good sit-down session where you can talk with one another and see what the points are that the other side has may lead you to change your opinion. It's very difficult, but it can be done.
John Williams.
Thank you very much. I think it's essential that people, check your ego at the door, because when you have someone who disagrees with you, don't be hurt and upset that they disagree with you, because that prevents further productivity. I don't want to lose him votes by saying this, but I like Joe Statler. He's a good guy. We get along in a personal way, but we disagree on a whole heck of a lot. But we find things that we agree on, and we work on them together. Talking about Amendment 1, we probably shouldn't talk about Amendment 1, but he said he'd be open to that Medicaid birth control idea he had. Let's focus on that. There's some positive change that we do agree with. Don't focus on the things that we disagree on. We've never had a personal discussion about right to work because we know that we don't agree on it. So what good does it do to belabor those points? Rather, let us look for common goals, common policy points that we can work on to better the state of West Virginia. I hope I didn't lose you any votes there, Joe.
Cindy Fritsch?
Yes, and just to make sure I say my name this evening, I am Cindy Fritsch. I tend to forget to say that. I try to have Democrats co-sponsor my bills. Democrats from across the state ask me to sign on to their bills. I do. The fentanyl bill I mentioned earlier, that was had one lead sponsor was a Democrat. I signed on as the second sponsor, and it became law. 4 years ago, when Republicans took over, I was the first Republican to vote no on a Republican bill, after we'd gained control, because I was against the bill. I don't have trouble doing things like that. I do what I believe is right. And my bill, that created the Office of Drug Control Policy, last year it passed in the last 15 minutes of the session. It was stalled over in the Senate. It needed to have, it was stuck, and they had to pass it through so that it didn't have to go through the 3 readings. So they had to do special things to get that through. There were senators from all over the state standing up and making speeches on behalf of my legislation to get it through, because it was important. And it didn't matter what party we were on something like that. So I appreciate, there's a lot of Democrats that I get along with very well in Charleston. And when I was in the minority, I worked to help this state. It didn't matter to me what party, and it didn't matter to me that what I was doing would help the majority and perhaps help them maintain power. I wanted to do the right thing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Joe Statler?
Well, first, thank you, John Williams. I will say that the one thing I do believe in, when we're elected to go to Charleston or Washington, D.C., is we do have to go with our minds open and our hearts open. And yes, we got values that some of us agrees with on some issues, some of us don't agree with on other issues. But I can tell you, I don't stand up and I don't beat the drums to try and put anybody down. I will take a bill, and I've had bills out there where I've had of my own. I get Democrats to help sponsor that also. I need their votes the same as the Republican vote. It doesn't matter to me, where the vote comes from. And there's been times they say, well, if you just change this one little thing in there, then I can enter upon that. I have no problem with that. That's what this is all about. It's about trying to come up with a piece of legislation that is best for the state of West Virginia. Not as what's best for me, because you can see with this hair on my head, I don't have that many years left on this earth. So the thing I'm trying to do is move the state forward, not move me forward. Thank you.
Debbie Warner?
It occurred to me, I raised 4 very different children, and somehow we ended up with a cohesive family. I believe it's really important to listen to opposing ideas, be respectful of other people. And sometimes you're going to agree to disagree. But I think everybody at this table, we all are working towards making West Virginia a better place. And at the end of the day, that's what's really important that we represent this district and the people in the state of West Virginia.
Evan Hansen?
This question reminds me of a talk I went to at WVU last night. There was a guest speaker in the Festival of Ideas who was talking about civility and how to return civility to American democracy. And it was pretty thought-provoking. He talked about how there's 2 parts to having a democracy work. Number 1, there's the discussion like we're having today. And number 2, there's the vote. And too often in recent years across America, not just here in West Virginia, we've forgotten how to have that discussion. We've gone straight to the vote. We've gone back into our camps and talked with people who agree with us and not even tried to have discussions with people whose views may not agree with ours. And his words of advice, which I think ring true, is in order to have an effective discussion, you can't go into it assuming that your political opponents don't have the best interest of the people in mind. You need to go into it thinking the opposite of that everybody who's elected to represent the people actually has the best interest of the people in mind. We may have different ideas of how to get there, but we need to listen, and we need to listen respectfully in order to have an effective discussion.
Barbara Evans Fleischauer.
I went to that same lecture last night because I wanted to get some ideas, and it was really interesting. I think it used to be a lot more collegial in the legislature. I think that there used to be a lot more socializing, especially on the Judiciary Committee where I've served for a long time. There was a lot more involvement between members of both parties in shaping policy. And I'm sad that it has gotten more polarized. I don't know what the solution is. The gentleman who spoke last night said that we each need to reach out and have more discussions with people that are our friends and family, because everybody has someone in their family that they don't agree with politically, and start the discussion there. I'm not sure that's really the way forward, but I do think we should remember that most of the votes, probably 85% of the votes in Congress and in the West Virginia legislature are close to unanimous. We agree on most things. There are some things that we strongly disagree about, but I think that more discussion would be helpful.
Okay, thank you. And we had other questions prepared, but we had so many good audience questions that we are going to skip 2 of our own questions to go to that. And just so you know, the process that we went through, or what our sorters here went through, was to organize them by theme and then pick out the best question for that one particular theme. And for our timer and for the candidates, we are going to cut 15 seconds off of your time. So we're down to 45 seconds. That way, when we looked at the clock, we could get through our audience questions and still be done. And you've been doing a great job of doing that, keeping... Well, this is lightning round with an explanation. So just a little bit shorter questions. So, first up, the question is, what is the best way that you will be able to advance growth in Mon County and make it an attractive place for entrepreneurs? And randomly selecting Cindy Fritsch. If you need me to repeat the question, I'd be happy to read it again.
Did you
Yes.
repeat the question?
What's the best way you will be able to advance growth in Mon County and make it an attractive place for entrepreneurs?
Well, the roads certainly do seem to be an issue. I'm very concerned at the inability of the Division of Highways. We did pass, we had a special session to change the law to make it easier for them to, for the DOH to hire, to streamline. There doesn't seem to be a lot of progress from that. They did give raises when we raised general revenue pay. It's a special revenue fund, so I kept on them constantly asking them if they were going to give a pay raise to the workers, because I always hear, we don't have enough workers here to fix the potholes, so I was very concerned about that. But seems to be a very serious management issue within the Division of Highways. District 4 seems to be the one suffering from that. There's other things we need to do as far as WVU. On the Finance Committee, I've been fighting like heck to protect the budget for WVU. Particularly, it's been particularly difficult with such revenue problems because our major industry was under such in crisis, and losing all those companies and jobs and bankruptcies. The revenues were horrible. I looked under every rock to find money, but each governor's idea, the easy way to get the money was to cut WVU in particular. Not just higher ed, but WVU. So I've been fighting against that. I think
Ms.
WVU
Frisch,
is
I'm
very
sorry, we're out of
important for our county as well as the roads.
I want to be respectful of everyone, so I don't want to interrupt you at mid-sentence. Well, I know it's tough. Evan Hansen.
Well, one thing we could do is take care of the basic infrastructure that our government is not always taking care of. So we need good roads. We need to have a world-class education system, public education here, so that people are happy moving here. That's one of the most important things that employers look for their employees. Another thing we can do if we really want to attract tech jobs is that there are any number of companies now that will only locate in states where they can buy renewable energy. They have renewable energy and sustainability policies that require them to get either 100% or nearly 100% of their electricity from renewables. And that means that they will not come to West Virginia because they will not buy coal and natural gas-based electricity. There are some small tweaks we could make to our laws that will make it much easier and more cost-effective for companies to do that. So that's one thing I would do to support entrepreneurs.
Thank you. Debbie Warner.
I think, I would say infrastructure, roads, and broadband. Our roads are really in bad shape, and our secondary roads. And we need funding to make sure we pay the Department of Highways people enough, and so they'll stay in those jobs. And then broadband, get broadband out of the counties.
Joe Stadler.
I agree. Infrastructure includes a lot more than roads. Our roads are in deplorable shape, but we also lack across the county broadband and cell service in a lot of the areas. We need to improve that. But one other thing that we have out there that we proposed last year was the Mountaineer trails, bike trails. And I think this would be big in this area to help bring some tourism in. And I will tell you, when you talk about bills where everybody can join in, I believe every member, if I'm not mistaken, signed onto that legislation and nearly got through. So those are the type of things that we need to look at out there, how we can improve the citizens' life, because it makes a big difference if the people wants to move here. I do believe we have a world-class education system in the county. So with that, thank you. Time's up.
Oh, thank you. Roger Shuttlesworth.
I believe there's a couple areas that we really could, in the state of West Virginia, improve the opportunity for business, especially large-scale businesses like automotive, folks like Amazon and those places to come in. And one of those is the inventory tax. That inventory tax is quite a burden on a lot of these companies, especially companies like those that I just mentioned that carry a large inventory all the time. I think that would be a big plus. I think we've started some programs to educate our people to increase their knowledge of software and software programs. I think that those kind of educational opportunities need to continue to give us a trained workforce, so when these larger companies want to come into West Virginia, that we can prove to them that we can find people that fit into their business.
Rodney Piles.
Well, if we can find $143 million, we can repeal the inventory tax. But I think, as has been mentioned by several others, that roads is a definite problem. And while we're building new ones, maintenance is a problem because of understaffing, which is due to a lack of being able to pay competitive salaries. And a bill that I sponsored would have forced, if you'll excuse the term, collusion between the Department of Highways and the Department of Personnel, because the Department of Personnel sets the salary schedules. The other problem is, another issue is the airport, and all the incumbents at the table sponsored the bill to create a joint airport authority, which will help expand our airport.
Danielle Walker.
So infrastructure is an issue, education is an issue, but more importantly, affordable housing. We're going to bring these people here and they're going to pay what? After they finish paying the repairs on their vehicle, how do you want them to pay for their housing? It's ridiculous. But we also need to look about going green. And that's not just cannabis, that's going solar and wind. These companies want to come here, but we have to fix what's here first. We have a lot of infrastructure issues, and it goes beyond the roads. We need to make sure that our people are getting paid what they needed to be paid. We need to make sure that our people are being educated before we allow someone else to come in and have their children educated.
Barbara Evans Fleischauer.
I think we are very lucky to live in this particular community. You know, you look around, we're in an oasis compared with the rest of the state. And one of the main reasons is because of the university. We have a lot of talent here. We have a lot of creativity. And we have a lot of ideas that are fostered in an academic situation. So I think we have we are ripe it is a good place to be an entrepreneur. And what can we do to make it more attractive? Well, I think my colleague to my left had it right. The roads. You want to recruit somebody here, you have to really take a complicated route to figure out a way that it isn't horrible. So my proposal for the roads, which I think would help in recruiting new talent, would be to triple the pay of the current field workers in highways, because there is such a demand in the gas industry, in the city, of higher paying wages. I think that's what it would take to be competitive, because we're down by 2/3. We have 2/3 of the workforce we need, and we need to pay those people so they don't walk with their feet.
John Williams.
Thank you. I believe roads are critical. I've heard that a lot of entrepreneurs, when they come to an area, as soon as they get off the plane, what do they look at? The roads. The roads are a good indication of what kind of attention other investment is made into that community by the government. If you were to look at how shabbily our roads are currently treated, you wouldn't think the government cares much about investing in that community. I think a big part of the attacking plan with the roads is to redo the funding formula, to base it on the amount of state roadways in a DOH district and the amount of vehicles in a district. Sounds common sense to me, but that's not how it's currently done. There currently is a bill, and we need to make sure that gets passed. Also, I think that a large part of getting companies to come here has almost been too singularly focused on what benefits the company. I think we need to take a more employee type approach at what kind of lifestyle would they like. And that means passing ENDA so that people can't be thrown out of their house because of their sexual orientation. And that means not allowing logging in state parks, which sadly there was a proposal that would have done just that here a few months ago. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the next question. As a delegate, what would you do to support the Second Amendment rights of West Virginians? First up is Roger Shuttlesworth.
I am a Second Amendment supporter, and I am also a proud member of the NRA. I do believe that we do have a right to own and bear arms. I do also think we need to do that in a legal manner and do that in a way that doesn't cause harm or danger to the public. I do not like the idea that some would cluster everyone in the same group, that everybody that owns a gun is evil or demonic, and they're going to go around being terroristic and killing people. That's not the history of the United States. That's not the history of West Virginia. We're a state that proudly allows hunting, and it's quite a part of what we do for tourism and collecting people to come in and hunt and fish and do the wildlife in West Virginia.
Cindy Fritch.
Well, I support the Second Amendment, and I vote that way in the legislature. If you don't have your Second Amendment right, you don't have your other rights. If the government takes your guns away, they can take everything away from you. And that's what I believe, and that's how I vote. Thank you.
Barbara Evans Fleischauer.
I'm not sure it's the job of any of us to support the Second Amendment. It's pretty obvious that we have it, it's there, but I don't know that it's the job of government to support it. I don't, what the Constitution says is that it's not to be infringed. And I think it's the job of everybody to make sure that all of our constitutional rights are not infringed upon.
Joe Statler?
I also support the Second Amendment, but I will tell you, whether it's support of it or not, it is a federally set down by our forefathers, and they felt this was very important to put that out there before, and there was a reason for it. They came from where the guns was removed and taken away, and they know what won this country over. So I would say to you that is there times that and laws in place right now that needs enforced? Absolutely. There is already laws that's on the books. It's not being enforced when you look at it. We do need to enforce our laws. They're there for a reason. As I said earlier, when we go to Charleston or when they go to D.C., you swear to uphold the Constitution of the United States and of the state. And that's what we need to do. Thank you.
Danielle Walker?
Thank you.
Second Amendment. I support for you to bear arms. I'm a gun owner. But also we need to make sure that we have background checks. We need to also make sure that the person who does not have a weapon is also protected. We also need to make sure that maybe if there's a situation where someone has a protective order, that maybe that police officer removes the gun from that particular person. See, we want regulations on everything, especially when it's things that we support or things that we don't support. We need regulations throughout everything. So we need common sense gun laws. We need common sense regulations. I've heard so many times, guns don't kill people, people kill people. That can go twofold.
Evan Hansen?
Well, we do have the right to bear arms with the Second Amendment in the U.S. Constitution, and by the way, we also have the right to bear arms in the state constitution. And as far as I'm concerned, that is settled and a non-issue. So I'm not focused on that. I'm not focused on changing those laws. I'm focused on other things that I think are important for West Virginia right now. I'm focused on investing in the state and the people. I'm focused on diversifying the economy and creating jobs.
Rodney Piles?
I don't think there has to be any worry about the West Virginia legislature ever doing anything to restrict the Second Amendment. I think there would be probably 80 votes from both sides of the aisle on any proposal to make any changes or restrictions to constitutional right to bear arms, and which I certainly support to a certain extent with some of the restrictions that Danielle Walker mentioned. Certainly we have hunters and sportsmen in the state, and certainly those types of weapons should certainly remain legal. But as I said before, there's nothing that anybody could do to make any restrictions at this point in time.
Debbie Warner?
I personally don't own a gun, but I do support the Second Amendment. You know, my kids were in the military and we've been around them, know how to use them, and I think it's important that there's training on how to take care of a weapon, how to discharge it. And I agree with Danielle. Guns don't kill people; people kill people. So no, I support the Second Amendment. It is part of our Constitution, and I think there are other things to focus our time and energy on right now.
John Williams?
Thank you. I do support the Second Amendment, but I'm reminded of something that I believe Madison said. He said that the right to swing one's fist ends at your neighbor's nose. And with that, we passed a bill in the legislature that will make it so that property owners cannot say they don't want guns on their premises. That includes churches. And so there's an issue where you have the owner, the rights of a property owner that are in conflict with those of a gun owner. I voted against that bill. I don't think that on every single issue like that, we should just let the NRA run roughshod over the state legislature. Additionally, we have hundreds of thousands of teenagers in the entire country who are highly more likely than you and I to be the victims of gun violence that staged a walkout last year. One of their mothers is here, a friend of mine. Miranda Kilwine, she was one of those people who walked out of school and out of Morgantown High School. They are saying that they are concerned, and I think something needs to be looked at as to how we keep our kids safe.
Okay, next audience question. How can you help in the retention of teachers in West Virginia? Many are leaving for more lucrative positions outside of the state. How do we not only attract teachers, but keep them in our state? Joe Stadler.
I think there's lots of ways that you can retain and influence teachers to stay in. One, you have to have an environment that's set up where teachers wants to come in and work. And I think we have that in Montague County. One of the school board members is here, Ms. Anderson's here tonight. And I will tell you that being a former school board member 10 years, you have to listen to what the people have to say. You have to weigh out what their concerns are, where they're at, and what their issues are. This is a mighty complex world that we live in today. And I do know one thing, that we just can't bring every trouble of society to the doorsteps of education and expect them to take care of that themselves. It's not always going to happen that way. They're definitely a partner, but they can't be the only fix. Thank you.
Roger Shuttlesworth.
I'd like to take just a little bit different twist on how to keep teachers in West Virginia. I think that right now we do have a base salary for where a teacher comes in. I know that all West Virginians are concerned about our low test scores. I'd like to see some additional incentive pay. The best teachers get the most pay based on how well they educate the children that we send into the room. I don't see any reason why a teacher can't get a bonus for doing an exemplary job. And when the students come out, they take those tests, they have high test scores, and they've improved over the years. I think really that would show improvement in our school system, and the best teachers would get more money than the teachers that are basically average or have average students. And I know that's got to be cued in some way, because the student that a teacher gets, they don't decide that. So there's got to be some professional way of administering that.
Debbie Warner.
I think to keep and retain quality teachers, one, got to fund PEIA and make that secure and pay them appropriately. And beyond that, I think it's important to sit down with teachers and find out what is it you need in the classroom. What is it that legislation and the government can do to make your job enjoyable? What are the resources you need? And I think you need to involve teachers in that conversation.
Evan Hansen.
My mom was a teacher, so I saw firsthand how hard they work and how important their job is. And in order to attract them and keep them, I mean, we've talked already about how to make investments in teachers in terms of raising their pay. They got a 5% raise last year. That needs to continue so that their salaries could actually be competitive with surrounding states. We need to shore up PEIA and find a dedicated funding stream and a long-term plan for that. And one thing people haven't talked about yet is that we need for the legislature not to micromanage the curriculum. We need to leave that to the educators and to the teachers who are professionals and should be treated with respect as the professionals that they are.
Danielle Walker.
Well, we definitely need to fund PEIA. The teachers definitely need to be paid. But you know what? What about their loans? They need a loan forgiveness. When I was on those lines, I heard those teachers say that they have to cross state lines just to pay their student loans. This is a loan that's going to carry with them if they have small children until that child is ready to go to college. That's disgusting. We must do better. West Virginia. This is how we retain the teachers that we have here. I also would fight for these teachers to receive a stipend. These teachers are with those children whether they want to deal with the opioid crisis as soon as that child walks in. They're dealing with that child being hungry. They're dealing with that child not having a warm coat. This is how we keep these teachers here in West Virginia. This is how we bring more.
John Williams.
It's simple. You pay them. We're not solving quadratic equations here, guys. I mean, when they went out on strike, it was about lacking health insurance that was promised to them when they became a teacher. It's about feeling as if they are not paid adequately. It's simple, and that's what we need to do, and it's a simple investment that we need to make in that. Furthermore, I would go back to a bill that I have sponsored that teachers would benefit, which would be to attach their salaries to the Consumer Price Index, so that this is no longer a political football that just keeps get kicked down the road continuously. Rather, as the value of a teacher's dollar goes down, their price, their salary automatically goes up. It's common sense. Thanks.
Barbara Evans Fleischauer.
Well, I think that our agreement on this subject says a lot for the teachers and how they communicated with us. And I think John said, and what I would say just slightly differently, is you get what you pay for. And if you don't pay for it, people like the highway workers will walk with their feet. So we need to and what the main thing I think people were saying is the PEIA increases are just way too much, in addition to not being paid anywhere near the average salary. The second thing I think, and I agree with what Debbie Warner said about listening. I think that's really, really critical, is we shouldn't say what we think the issues are. We need to make sure we're listening. But I think with the opioid crisis, we're going to need more social workers, and we are going to need more counselors, and we are going to need more nurses. So we need to invest in that too, because that can't be the job of the teacher to take care of all the children that have extra problems.
Cindy Fritsch.
Seems like everything I was going to say has been said, but I'll say it again. I think the teachers' major concern when they walked out was the PEIA, the wellness program that the Finance Board created, and which is not the Legislative Finance Committee, it's the PEIA Finance Board, and the changes in the income levels to determine the rates and benefits. And we did get control of that. We froze that, and we've dedicated a lot of funding to it to deal with that. We have the task force. We'll wait to see what they say. So we are seriously working on that. And we did give a historical pay raise to the teachers. And every year they get, on top of that, they receive a 1% pay raise as well. What I think would be very helpful to them is that they do not have to deal with the societal problems on the front lines. We need to get control over the opioid crisis. These children are being traumatized by their families that are struggling with drug use. We do need more behavioral health folks in the schools. I think that that's very important to make it easier for them to teach students and to make their lives easier in the schools. Thank you.
Hey, Rodney Piles.
Well, we're not going to attract many qualified teachers or keep them if when we're 48th in pay in the nation, and teachers told us during the session that many of them took the job, were willing to put up with a low pay because of the fringe benefits. But then PEIA became a problem, and we started losing teachers again. So we got to fix PEIA, and also we got to provide some kind of annual tax, or not tax, but salary increases for the teachers to get their pay to a higher level. And I like John Williams' suggestion about tying an increase to the Consumer Price Index, but certainly teachers should be entitled to at least 2% a year for the next few years.
Okay, and we're on to our last question, which was submitted to us via our Facebook feed, which I think is fun. Somebody who's not here in person can submit a question and we get to ask you guys. So, what are your views on diversifying our energy production away from coal and towards clean energy? And first up is John Williams.
Obviously, we have to do something. Production is down, and I think it's obvious now that production was down not simply because of EPA policies in the last decade. That is not the only reason. Coal markets are down globally, and that's a big reason why production was down. What we need to do is we need to dispel the myth that a green economy does not have a substantive labor force. Rather, studies show that green economies do in fact support, as mechanization goes, as manufacturing goes, green economies support about 2.2 more jobs than non-green economy manufacturing. So I think that's got to be a huge priority. We need to make West Virginia's economy diverse going into the 21st century, something that is sustainable not only in its energy, but a sustainable economy to give to our children.
Cindy Fritsch.
Well, the coal industry did make a comeback. As a matter of fact, that's what's bolstering our revenues and bolstering our economy, creating large surpluses. By the time the year's over, we could have $500 million surplus. That's a possibility. So the coal industry is coming back. It's not going to come back to the way it was. But I do not want ratepayers to be subsidizing or paying higher rates in order to, I don't know. I hope we're not talking about destroying an industry that this state was built on. I support all of the above. I also support natural gas. And it is my hope that we can have natural gas staying in the state with the value-added jobs. We could have manufacturing in this state. We could have great prosperity in this state. And when you say all of the above, to me that means not trying to destroy the other fuels, including fossil fuels. Thank you.
Thank you. Rodney Piles.
We play defense on this issue a lot in the legislature. We actually have people who feel they can advance coal by destroying tax benefits for wind and solar energy. But I actually favor expansion of these other energy forms. I think there's something that can create jobs because a lot of these unemployed coal miners can be trained to manufacture and install solar panels, manufacture and install wind turbines. And so I think it's a means not only of diversifying the economy, but also creating jobs.
Roger Shuttlesworth.
I think Rodney hit on the gist of the question. I think basically the question was how to go green with wind and solar power. I happen to be one of West Virginia's people that invested in both. I have 2 windmills at my home, and I also have solar panels. And I worked for the power company for more than 32 years. West Virginia is a very difficult place for solar. Our hills and valleys and our short season in the summer does not give us a good opportunity to have a good solar footprint. Although I've also had very much difficult making wind successful at my home. If you look into the industry to build a windmill, the ones you see in the Parsons area, around West Virginia, around the country in general, the footprint that they have to manufacture that costs more energy than that windmill will create in its entire lifetime. That's a problem we need to overcome. We need to lower the cost for the windmills, and I think West Virginia could do that with a little bit of investment and diversity.
Joe Statler.
Well, I tell you, I, like Roger, looked a few years back at if I could put solar panels in. I never looked at the wind and make it pay back. Well, it wouldn't pay back for me. I don't know about the rest, but I'm not opposed to looking at those issues. I do believe that we have some hurdles to get over. But you know, the one thing that I'm sitting up here and I can't understand is less than 2% of our dams across the United States has hydroelectric generating plants on them. And I don't understand that. We have them there. They may not produce all that we need, but we certainly should harness up the hydroelectric industry and put those generators onto those plants where it's feasible to do so. Other than that, I will tell you that the thing that we overlook a lot in this area is Longview was built. It's the cleanest burning power plant in the United States. So we can do things to make it better. Thank you.
Barbara Evans Fleischauer.
I think we are really missing out on opportunities. Other states, other countries have thousands and thousands of jobs in renewable energy, and we should be doing that too. We are so behind the curve because really the number of people employed in the coal industry, even though it's part of our history, is really pretty small. And it's dwarfed by the huge expansion in various kinds of renewables. One of the other things we could work on is energy efficiency. That's the low-hanging fruit. We've had legislation in the legislature for the past couple of years to work on local energy efficiency programs where cities and counties could use their bonding authorities to allow especially small businesses to get loans to do energy efficiency so they would save money. So my time's up. I'll quit.
Danielle Walker.
Well, solar and wind is definitely one of the options, but we also maybe need to look at hemp also. I've known a lot of families that do use solar energy. One of my neighbors is a Habitat for Humanity partner family. She loves her solar panels. It saves her family tremendous amount of money because she is a single parent. So we can do it, but we just need to make sure that it's affordable for everyone to do it. That's the issue. We need to make sure that we open up to something differently in doing it. When there's something new, we always put boundaries there. And we can educate those who are not employed right now in our coal industries to learn how to put up these solar panels.
Debbie Werner.
I think we need a long-term, comprehensive energy plan in the state and actually in the nation. We've got technology now that we can burn coal cleanly. And I think I'm open to a conversation on all types of energy and developing a long-term plan.
Evan Hansen.
There's a lot of myths that are still being spoken in West Virginia about renewable energy. And there's a lot of people in Charleston that are continuing to look backwards instead of looking forwards and try to protect an industry rather than trying to get all the jobs here. And to me, that's irresponsible. There's a lot of jobs in coal, there's a lot of jobs to be had in natural gas, and there's a lot of jobs to be had in renewables, and we need to get all those jobs in West Virginia. And when you have people in Charleston that are fighting for a single industry and keeping those other jobs out, they're doing a disservice to all of us here in the state and in this county. There's 250,000 solar jobs across the country, 250,000, and they're not coming to West Virginia. And the reason they're not coming here is because of these backwards policies we have that are keeping them out. They're purposely keeping them out. And solar works in West Virginia. The surrounding states have hundreds to thousands of megawatts of solar installed, hundreds or thousands of megawatts, and West Virginia has 7, not 700, not 7,000, but 7. So not only are we keeping the solar panels out, but we're keeping all the jobs out that could be generated to install those solar powers. We're keeping the clean, green electricity out to protect a single industry. That's backwards thinking. That's why we need new blood in Charleston.
Well, my phone tells me it's 9:02, so that's not too bad. Let's give all of our candidates a round of applause. Give yourselves a round of applause. This is an important part of democracy in our system, so thank you for taking the time to be here.
mud bogging, working the fields, or just cruising, the Tire Lady has just the right tire for you. And if you want your ride to really stand out, ask about tire and wheel combinations. Get the most out of your vehicle with the perfect set of shoes from the Tire Lady at Rainbow Tire, and the Tire Lady will take care of you.
Rainbow Tire, the Tire Lady takes care of me. Rainbow Tire, the Tire Lady takes care.
At the Landing Dental Spa, our goal is to provide quality dental care at a relaxed spa-like atmosphere. Dental chairs with heat and massage, warm neck wraps, and personal TVs make your appointment as stress-free as possible. Located off the Pierpont exit, now accepting new patients of any age. Call 304-594-2200 today and visit our website at www.thelandingdentalspa.com to schedule an appointment. The Landing Dental Spa, a healthy smile with peace of mind.